I was on the floor of my basement apartment that God spoke to me, and he said to me, "My son, I am." I was weeping. I was literally on the floor, just in the fetal position, hating my life, hating what I had allowed it to come to up until this point. And I asked Yeshua, God, if this is really you, if you're really God, you need to tell me. And he told me in this moment, "My son, I am." And it was like a light bulb went off in my mind, in my heart, kind of connecting my heart and my mind at the same time. And I knew that without a shadow of a doubt, this was the Lord, Yeshua, HaMashiach, speaking to me in this moment. And I never turned back. You know, all the times in my life thus before, I turned back.
Amazing. You know what brings the giants of the Bible together? Abraham, David, Noah. Their encounters with God.
Yes.
And that's what unifies us as believers, our encounters with the living God.
Yes.
Not a certain practice that we do or certain good deeds that we try to do to either please God or make the world a better place.
Yeah.
It's our encounter. What an amazing experience. So I want to go back because I know that it changed your life. And we're going to get into that, but I want to go back a little bit. Tell me about your upbringing. You're raised in a Messianic Jewish family. And, you know, we like to say that God doesn't have grandkids, right? Every single person has to have their personal experience with God and make their own decision. So whether you're raised in it or not, you still have to have your own encounter and make your own decision.
Yes.
So how were you raised?
So 5.5 years old, my parents split, and I grew up in a divorced house. My mom remarried a non-Jewish man, and we sort of began the process of figuring out how do we kind of do this lifestyle with a Jewish mom and a non-Jewish dad. And my non-Jewish dad was also, at this point, my stepfather, right? Was taking us to churches.
So that your family were you believers yet? Your parents, your Jewish parents?
So my parents grew up secularly Jewish and became believers at a young age for me.
Okay.
I was like 1-2 years old, right? When they were kind of walking into this Messianic faith.
Okay.
They both, right, went to the Messianic congregation when I was younger. And then at the divorce point, mom sort of went off to do sort of the Christian church thing with my stepdad. And my dad remarried a Jewish woman who grew up conservatively Jewish.
Yes.
So I saw on both sides of my family some levels of hypocrisy and rocky parts of just new Jewish believers trying to walk out their faith.
Wow.
And it wasn't a complete testimony that was helpful for me as a child.
Right. Wasn't inspiring.
Wasn't inspiring, whatsoever. And so, you know, what did I do, right? I played soccer, I went to school, I hung out with my friends. High school, I'm partying, right?
Right, it gradually takes you in until you realize you're just so deep.
You're deep.
Yeah.
You know, I struggled with various levels of doing drugs, and I struggled with putting women before God.
What did you think these things were going to give you?
Yeah, I think that they were going to be like the help along the way, right? I was angry, I think, a lot at like my parents' divorce and you know, just identity issues.
Okay.
And
speaks to a lot of people in the generation today. Who am I?
Yeah.
What am I?
Yeah. And so, you know, this experience where your identity is a big question mark.
Yeah.
And you're filling that identity question with, maybe I could find it in this music scene.
Right.
Or maybe I could find it in being, you know, hanging out with people who smoke a lot of weed. Or,
right. This is really cool because what we look for from our parents and we don't get the foundations of faith, of morality, of an example, of an inspiration, we try to find outwardly.
Yes.
But we don't know we're doing it.
Yeah.
So we're searching for all the right things in all the wrong places.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I believe that. Like, my parents did an amazing job raising me, and I give them so much credit for doing their best in all the ways.
Yeah.
But I needed to have this understanding of who God was myself.
Right.
So, you know, as God's wooing me back, I'm also contemplating death.
Okay.
Right? You know, and so as I'm praying with God and He's revealing more to me about who He is through the things that I'm reading, and these were mostly secular academic works that I was reading at this point, and books about Judaism, books about Christianity, and, you know, not necessarily the scriptures, right? I wasn't there yet in my journey. But nevertheless, I was contemplating, who is God? Who was I?
Yeah.
Why weren't these things of the world fulfilling me in the way that I thought that they were going to fulfill me? And, I had given over sort of the addiction to various drugs at this point. I was wrestling sort of with, the various ways that I was putting everything, with music or with women, right, above God at this point in my life. But God still wasn't first for me in my life.
Yeah.
And, so as I'm answering this question sort of slowly, right, over the ending years of my military and walking into sort of my college years, continuing to research, what is Judaism? What is Christianity? What is this thing called Messianic Judaism that my parents sort of taught me as a kid, right? If the majority of the Jewish people in the world don't believe in Jesus as the Messiah, then, why did my parents believe this? And I needed to make sense of, where in the timeline of history, right, did these things come about? I needed to make sense of it historically. I needed to understand who this person of Jesus actually was. So I started to read a little bit in the Gospels, right, in Matthew, the book of Matthew, and I started to continue to do my history searching and making sense of kind of when, right, Jesus of Nazareth sort of walked and talked on the earth. And, in the larger scope of like, Jewish history and Christian history, right? And making sense of these things, and then walk that forward even to the point of, where did this come back up in American history, right? And so if I'm an American Jew and, like I'm thinking about like, where does Messianic Judaism as a sect actually like converge with American Jewish history, right? Like, how do these things flow from Jesus's time frame of the first century to like now in the 21st century, right? Like, how does that mesh, right? Like, and so I'm making sense of these things, right, from a historical perspective, and slightly a religious perspective, right, and as it pertains to the person of Jesus. But still, that wasn't enough, Jeff. No matter how much academic study I did, no matter how much I even like started to put aside like what I would say, the worshiping of music that I was doing, or the worshiping of like different drugs I was trying, and the partying I was doing, and the females I was dating, right? It's like none of that was working, right? But even the academic studying of these things weren't working.
Okay.
And so this is where I get to this point of nothing's working, and I keep, what I would say is like I was hitting like some people call it rock bottom. I used to always describe it as, hitting the brick wall at 100 miles an hour in all of the key areas of my life, right? Okay. And so when you do that a couple of times over, right, with various drugs or music scenes or women and relationships in your life that go awry, it hurts. And you're in deep pain inside. It's like a tumultuous struggle.
Okay.
And so, I guess somewhere deep inside me, I had hope that God was going to reveal himself to me. And I always sort of had a sense through my years in the military, contemplating death, seeing aspects of combat, and having some experiences where I believed God had been watching over me through these years. Even in my academic journey and struggle, right? And not getting it in my mind and in my heart. God was like hovering over my experience, right? And protecting me. And I felt his presence at times, even. And, and not even knowing that it could be real, right? For me, in a sense, right? But like, this is how I would describe it now, right? His presence.
So how did it change you?
Recognizing
who Jesus was and hearing that small voice.
In every way, right? I mean, it was like the areas of the ways that keep me from God in my life, that kept me from God in these times, right? Whether it was, the way I treated women, the way I thought about women, the way that, I was smoking a lot of weed in this time frame in my life. It's like these little areas of my life, even like the way that I like worshiped music and the scene of music and the outward appearance of how I needed to look and all these, it's like God like started to reveal in me that these things didn't need to be my identity anymore. And my relationship with him could actually be my identity with him.
Nice.
And I like maneuvered myself slowly, not, you know, overnight in any way, right? That's kind of fake, right?
Yeah.
It was like little by little, I kicked my habit of smoking weed, right? And doing whatever other partying drugs and stopped going to parties slowly over time. And I started to read in the scriptures more and more,
Okay.
Incrementally,
What did you
right?
find there?
The books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, right? The story.
What did you find in the scripture that?
Yeah, stories of Jesus.
Okay.
And the person of Jesus. And he became more real to me than ever before.
Right.
And so for me, you know, in my story, it's about surrender, and it's about relinquishing these habits that I was trying to do with God in a way that wasn't very honorable to him, honestly, right? I was living a life that was less than honorable. But even though I understood aspects of the Torah and the mitzvot, of how to, you know, keep his commands, but I couldn't do it on my own.
Right.
And so what I would say is that, you know, posturing yourself in your heart with a spirit of humility is actually more of the answer than trying to do actions of following his ways that we can't actually fulfill fully on our own. And
Good point.
you know, making sense of that and the confusion of all of my sin, right? The things that keep us from God, you know, helped me to grasp this when I hit that brick wall at 100 miles an hour every time.
Amazing. So Jacob, there's somebody watching right now who's struggling with sex, addiction, drugs, and they're looking at you saying, you know, I kind of relate to this guy. What would you tell them about where they're going and what they should be looking for?
Yeah. I would say, you know, what you're looking for is the God of heaven, not the things of this world, right? Because we were formed in the image of God, and we were made for him, to worship him.
Right.
And he loves you, and he deeply cares for you.
Wow.
And if you would just posture your heart in a way that turns from the things that you're doing that keep you from him, and you turn to him instead, and you surrender your heart, and you ask yourself, how can I follow this God that loves me so much? And if you made that decision today to just turn, right, and follow him and learn more about who he is, you would understand, right?
I love that. I love that. Those who seek me with all their heart will find me.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Jacob, thank
Yeah.
you, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Appreciate you listening.
Yeah, it's not always easy to share your heart like that, but I totally related to your story. 20 years of New Age spirituality, trying to find God in all the things of the world, which left me broken, completely broken, and in despair. And when I gave up on life, that's when he reached down and picked me up. I was humbled. I wasn't humbling myself, I was humbled into it.
Yes.
And so your story really speaks to me of the authenticity of the God that sees us, that can change us and turn our lives around, put us back on our feet so that we can love and worship him. And he gives us back some of the things that we actually gave up for him, but now we do it for him.
Yes.
So,
Amen.
yeah, so thank you guys for watching. What a powerful story. If you like this kind of content, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments down in the comments section. If you have a question for Jacob, if you have a question for me, you can reach out to us at our email. God bless you all. Thanks for watching.
Shalom.